know it's been a minute since our last video, but we are currently in quarantine due to an outbreak of trichomonas. Also commonly known as Trich. Trichomonas is a protozoan parasite that primarily lives in the crop and digestive system of pigeons. In rare circumstances, there can also be abscesses of it in the body. It's highly motile. Under a microscope, it is said to look like falling leaves. It's absolutely covered in cilia, so it's really easy to see, provided it is still alive by the time you get the sample to the microscope. It's best detected by throat swab. Now I say if it's alive by the time you get to the microscope. The nice thing about Trich is that it cannot survive outside of the body temperature of the host. Birds have a natural body temperature of about 102 degrees. If the organism's environment drops much below that, regardless of moisture, it will almost immediately die. So it's a slow passing parasite. It can only be passed directly mouth to mouth through the pumping action of pigeons. Cocks tend to be reservoirs, or tend to be more potent reservoirs, because generally speaking, hens are drinking from their crop. The only birds drinking from the crop of a hen are babies. So you can pass this disease from mate to mate and from parents to children, but it's not easily passed outside of that because of the temperature requirements to keep the protozoan alive. Hello there, Gus. I know. I have emergency meds for birds that go clinical, and they are reserved as emergency meds for clinical birds because they are potent enough to be potentially toxic. The upside is that it's a single dose medication. However, because it can cause vomiting, excuse me, it's dusty. Because it can cause vomiting, it has to be given on an empty crop. So the preparation before giving the med is to isolate the bird that needs to be medicated for several hours, at least 4 hours, long enough to be absolutely certain that the crop is empty. Then you give the medicine and wait another 2 hours to make sure that it's all the way down before you allow them to eat again. Understandably, this is stressful, and it is best administered either to birds who have just arrived by mail, who will have been hungry, or birds who are currently symptomatic. Trich is a very common parasite. It is usually subclinical. And our first warning that Shotzi was not well is just that on Sunday, when everybody else was napping at the time of day when they usually nap, instead of being in a nest box or on a perch, she was napping on the floor. And whereas another bird in the nest box or on a perch would get up and go away if you disturbed their nap, Shotzi would just get up and scooch a little ways away and immediately fall asleep again. We had no warning prior to that. On Saturday, she was the normal level of active. I spend an awful lot of time in here with them. And she did not, upon inspection of her throat with a flashlight, she did not have any of the stereotypical Trich plaque buildup, which can either be a white or yellowish, cheesy looking growth. So my immediate concern upon taking her to the vet was that she was egg bound. But since we had recently lost Sweet Potato to Trich, and since you can go very light from just not eating, and you know, great way to discourage eating is a sore throat. So while we were at the vet, we did a fecal sample and a wet mount of a throat swab just in case. And sure enough, it turned up an awful lot of Trich. We have, because the rest of these birds are subclinical and because stress is a serious factor in making a subclinical bird clinical, we are, instead of starving them to force the oh shit meds down their throat, we have ordered meds that diffuse in their drinking water. That is a longer treatment. It is 5 days of treatment. Excuse me. But it's the much, much, much less stressful option on birds that are subclinical. This is, frankly, just the price you pay for high immunity, but I'll get into that later. Some folks have asked about our quarantine procedure. We will be shut down until the 16th of January at least. That will give us time to treat everyone, to wait and see if anyone else becomes symptomatic, to watch whatever squeakers hatch, because squeakers are kind of canaries in a coal mine when it comes to this kind of thing. There will be no birds going out until the 16th. We will not have visitors in person until after the 16th, at least. If there are birds who show symptoms before that point, we will extend our quarantine period and remain shut down. There is only one bird coming in who will go straight into quarantine in the house. And to prevent this being a problem later, we have added to our quarantine procedure a full, I lost the word, I'm sorry. A full examination by the vet, including a throat swab, as well as the usual fecal samples on arrival. I mentioned earlier that this is the price you pay for having a strong immune system. A strong immune system does not mean no pathogens. There's kind of no way for there to be no pathogens. A strong immune system simply implies that the pathogens present do not affect the individuals. Hello, Rigby. So when selecting for birds that have a high immunity, what you are trying to do is get their body to protect them from common pathogens by itself, which does not mean that the body will wipe them out. It just means that if it's there, it's kept in good enough control not to affect the bird's body. It does not necessarily mean that they don't have it and can't spread it if it's something common. I would prefer that they not have it, but the very nature of a strong immune system is that you don't have any warning that they might be ill until their immune system is completely overwhelmed, which takes a very long time. That's why you have to keep an especially sharp eye on squeakers. The condition called young bird's disease is not a condition that only affects young birds. Young bird's disease is whatever pathogens happen to be in your loft that the adults are immune to and the squeakers are not. Yes, Bet, you have a lovely singing voice. You do. You are a handsome young man. No, Tammy. So, we are blessed and grateful that this is a disease that does not spread easily, and one that I can treat the entire loft for. And it is definitely one that we'll be more aware of entering in new birds from now on. We're just going to treat it like we would lice and coccidia. Check for it on arrival. If we find it, treat it. If we don't, yay! It will be confirmed not present. We will continue to do videos as I'm able throughout our quarantine period, and we will keep our patrons and clients and anyone interested updated on the health and well-being of the loft birds. Meds for treating the flock as a whole were ordered yesterday, and we expect them this coming week. In the meantime, birds that are not symptomatic for a reason. Their immune system has already got this covered. So they're not in any danger in the interim. Birds that are symptomatic, however, are in danger pretty much immediately because, well, as I've repeatedly stated, they become symptomatic because their immune system is overwhelmed. Stress can knock a hole in the immune system, which is why I tell people I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if it comes from me. When you get it, quarantine it. Because the downside of a strong immune system is that stuff slips through really easily. So if you've got the funds, quarantine and double check. And for God's sake, if you find something, tell me. These are things I need to know. Don't worry that it's bad news. Bad news is still necessary information. Because if you got a bird from me that the vet found something in, that means there's something here that I need to get rid of. You guys help me keep my flock safe in so doing. This is a cooperative measure between breeder and rescuer and clients. So, vet visits have put a pretty serious dent in my funds. Do not worry though, my loves. Whatever I can't cover through Patreon or what we've made selling birds, which I definitely won't be able to get any more of until quarantine is over, is subsidized by my husband. So you don't have to worry about the birds' needs being met. I will also keep, as always, our patrons updated on our loft expenses. Because some of our followers are following for the purpose of eventually being able to set up and do this for themselves. So here's the shit I have to deal with. And here's how you deal with it. This is also why it benefits me to have such a small loft. Hello, Luxie. Oh my good Lord, Tandy. Oh no. Carrot. tried to get into Mia's nest space. Or I'm sorry, into Escher's nest space. Escher's on an egg. No, sir. Come on. That's your wife. Don't go harass him. He'll fight you. Okay. I'll leave you and your egg alone. Excuse me. Okay, so that's our current news. I am so bad at ending segments, and I'm so sorry. But if they're up for it, after this, I'll do a behavioral video. Some of them might be, some of them might not. We'll see who feels like what. And as always, thank you, my beloved patrons, for helping make this possible. Thank you to my viewers for your interest. And thank you to my followers on Tumblr for asking questions. I am sorry we were on hiatus from that. As soon as I am able to sit quietly and think clearly, I will resume answering those. Thank you again for your patience and your interest. And that has probably gone on long enough.